Okay, this is simply a review. You have these notes if you can find them. Again, ladies, should be this first question. You need to review what I'm about to show. It's been several weeks since we did it, so I just want to make sure that you know what to look at. And then once we've done this, you will have time to work with somebody. All right, so, well, I never asked you all of these things, but this is a good place to start. Crane's background, other works you're gonna have to remember, and then naturalism, impressionism, and structure, and the Battle of Chancellorsville. So those are all on your review sheet. This is a little bit of his background. Again, be able to show how his background might have influenced his writing. I don't see anything here necessarily, but I do see it here. This is where he got the ability to write, the experience to write, as well as the war experience. He never fought in a war, but he covered about 3 different, Mexico, Greece, and Cuba. And most of the, of course, he didn't live during the Civil War. He was born in, I think, 1871. But he just interviewed people that were still living in the 1880s. There were still lots of people, I mean, fairly young men. If they were teenagers in the Civil War, they would have been 38, 40. I mean, the lifespan wasn't what it is today, but so there would have been plenty of people to interview. So to me, that explains why he's able to write the greatest war story without ever having fought in a war. He died in 1900. You need to know at least one of these. So make sure you've studied the one that Maggie, Girl of the Streets, is another novel. It's about a prostitute, but not salacious or sensational. It's pretty grimy, as I remember, just kind of ugly kind of environment. You do need to know this. You'll be able to define naturalism, and that first one is a good definition. It applies to Occurrence at Owl Creek. It applies to this book, whereas man is an animal and he is subject to forces out of his control. By the way, you have these, but if you don't know where they are, this would be I'm not doing everything. I'm just pointing out the highlights. This probably wouldn't be a bad idea to write them down. So my definition, that's not exactly like it is there, is that it's the belief that man is victim of forces that are out of his control. Like these things are operating on him, like in Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. And I think there is a question on the test about that. I don't know if I put it on here, but I'm kind of telling you, make sure that you can use that in answering this question. Remember, he stood on the bridge, he got a noose around his neck. He tried to get away. He tried to run away in his mind, but he couldn't do it, and eventually was hanged. Remember how everything in the book, everything in the story, kind of forced him where he is. They forced him to be there at the bridge because they set him up. He didn't do that. He just was responding. He didn't know about that. And then he tried to get away, which is every man's desire, but you can't run from death. So when that's a great sort of an allegory to what naturalists believe. I don't know if I'll ask you anything about these three, but maybe extra credit. Darwin, Marx, and Freud all believe that you were subject.
Oh, we were just talking about Marx.
What'd you talk about?
We were talking about one of his essays with.
Listen
We were talking about one of his things with communism.
Communist Manifesto.
You did read the Communist Manifesto. I think I probably read that in college. I don't remember anything about it, but
It was good.
you liked it?
Yeah,
I mean,
Didn't like
you
it.
enjoyed learning about it,
that's what I mean,
but you
yeah.
didn't like the fun. So anyway, Darwin, Marx, and Freud all believed that man was a victim. Freud, that is Marx, was that it was social and national things, like, historical things that were forcing, that were happening outside of your control. Darwin, it was biological things, with evolution, and with Freud, it was psychological things. Anyway, determinism means that all acts of the will have kind of been predetermined by something, and they're not believers. We believe in predestination as Christians, but that's not, they don't believe God's doing it. They believe that they're just forces, unnamed forces. So you need to understand that to be able to explain it. Yeah, we can just go. All right, the other one that's on that list is Impressionism. So you need to be able to explain it. That it's really what the word means. Like if you get an impression about something, it's like the way you feel about it at that moment, and that's what the name comes from. And so in literature and art, instead of drawing exactly what they see, they're drawing their impression of what they see, or writing their impression. So it's not they can show what a tree looks like. They're going to show you how a tree looks like to me, or how it feels, which is, to me, how does a tree make you feel? I don't know. But that's kind of one way to explain why the word impression is used. And it's borrowed from art, and like we just said, it's how something makes you feel. And now the next slide, we're going to show you how this book is that. Just summarize it. You have these notes, but if you can't find them, this would be a good thing to write down. Yes, sir.
If we want like all of the notes, if we have like some bits written down, will these be up on Google Classroom, like the slide deck? I guess
I think they're on the video. I know they're on the video. They're not separate from that. You have to remember the date that it's on.
It'd be pretty
All right,
easy,
let me
just
go on.
submit it to the officer.
All right, so how do we see that in this book? And we didn't spend a lot of time on it. I don't expect you to thoroughly understand it, but the idea that the book contains a lot of impressions that the author, the speaker, and the author has about war. And they are these brief scenes about some battery that's getting blown up, or some soldier that's wounded, or some scene, some tree that's blasted. The whole book is written like that, with this scene and this scene and this scene. They're all part of the battle, but they don't have anything connected with each other. He loves contrasting colors, the dark grays and blacks versus lots of color. It's interesting, and you'll see that in the question or the quotes you have. That he loved that to juxtapose, to put those things together. So that's and the book, as I said earlier, is just a mass of fragments and episodes that are just one after another. Like Huck Finn was an episodic novel. It had one scene after another that didn't connect with each other. The only thing that connected the Grangerfords and the Shepherdsons and Sherburne and Boggs was Huck and the King and the Duke. So those two scenes had nothing to do with it. The people in Grangerfords never met Boggs, and Boggs never met the Wilkes. That's what we mean by an episode. They just one, and then it's behind, and you go to another one, and they're not themselves connected. And that's what you have here. You got these scenes that aren't logically connected. It's just, this is what I'm seeing at this moment. So that's sort of the way the book is, has impressionism, and you probably won't see much more of that. And this is on the list. How is it put together? That top one I've used over and over. Separation, initiation, and return. There is an essay. I promise you the essay will be a part of it. Will have something to do with that thing of separation. You just remember the characters. Some of them have names. The tall soldier and the loud soldier and the youth all have names, but we never know who the tattered soldier is or the cheery soldier. And then, of course, the first quote that we talked about yesterday is on there: the importance of atonement and blood. Nobody gets forgiven unless somebody pays for it. You know, it's like God is the great businessman. All these sins are against him, and he's not going to forgive. If you owe somebody a debt, you're not out of debt until somebody cancels the debt or you pay it back. And so that debt is canceled by somebody dying, and the Bible is Jesus. But in this book, who dies? Like what death is really for Henry the most important? Jim Conklin, and it's his death in chapter, I think it's 15, that changes Henry. Not immediately, well, immediately in small ways, but ultimately, he becomes a different person. There are a lot of factors. That's what the quizzes will, the quotes will help you with. And the theme of the book is this discovery of self. Like, who am I? That question. And remember, again, the separation is the fact that he's always separated from his fellow soldiers. He's separated from himself. He doesn't know who he is. He literally runs away. He separates himself. There's this initiation. There's this event that takes place. First of all, running, getting shot at. The initiation and the separation go together. The first bullets are he's initiated into war, and he runs. So he gets further separated. But eventually, starting with that corpse in the woods, he turns around, and everything after that is he's getting closer back to where he came from, until Jim dies. He gets hit on the head. The cheery soldier picks him up and drags him back to his unit. So he's right back where he started from. You need to remember that. That's going to be crucial here to the story. And be able to give some evidence why this could be the Battle of Chancellorsville. Here's the evidence. It's spring, early spring. Now, Chancellorsville took place May of 1863. The beginning of the movie said May of 1862. I don't know why they did that, but if it's Chancellorsville, it's a year later. There's a river involved, the Rappahannock River. The battle takes place on both sides of that river. And it's a dramatic Southern victory, Confederate victory. Do you remember who the hero in the sense of Chancellorsville was? I know she talked about it, but well, Lee, of course, yeah. Which one of his lieutenants? Which one of his? Yes, it was Stonewall Jackson, and he got shot and killed at that battle, and it's probably why the Confederate Army lost at Gettysburg, because they didn't have the best general they had was Jackson. But anyway, those are some. It doesn't mention the death of a general. The spring, the river, and the spectacular victory, because Jackson went around the enemy, went around the northern troops, and surprised them. And so it was just a spectacular. And why is it not mentioned? Well, soldiers never know where they are. In the movie at the end, he said, "I wonder what this battle's going to be called." Now, they don't have any idea. Did she talk about how the Confederates named their battle?
Were they the city?
Yes, like Manassas. Well, how did the Union Army name them?
Landmarks.
Or rivers, right? And so it became Bull Run, which was the creek that ran through the battlefield. Manassas. Same thing with Antietam. Chancellorsville, Sharpsburg was the name that the Confederates gave it, whereas the Yankees gave it Antietam, which I think is a river also. But it could have been a landmark, like you said. Gettysburg they both called it that. Okay, why did he pick Chancellorsville? Because Crane knew about it. It was dramatic, and it made a good story. And it was the first battle of the year from any regiment. So those are some evidences you can use when I ask you that question. And I think that's about it. So what I'm going to do is, I know we haven't completely finished the book, but I want to identify 3 quotes for you and then give you some time with somebody to go over them. And I want to see it. I want you to write these things down. I want to see it. You can work with somebody. So you need to tell me 3 things. You can put A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. The context, the speaker. The speaker's usually going to be the narrator, but not always. And the meaning. So the context, what's going on, where is this? You don't have to tell me what chapter it's in. The chronological order we'll do later. You don't have to do that now. And so I want to give you, you have to find the quote, all right? It's your job to find them. I'm gonna tell you that, the fourth one and, the last two, the fourth one and the last, I think every single one of those are on the last page of the book. So even if you haven't read the whole book, you can turn there to find out the context and what it means. So, this may not take the whole period. But remember, tomorrow we'll have a quiz and any last discussion, and we'll move on. We're gonna do, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde next, which I think you're gonna really enjoy. So find somebody to work with. When you're finished, raise your hand and let me see it. I give you credit. And just get 2 or 3 together. You don't need 5 or 6. You don't have a lot of room for that, so anybody you want to is fine.
I got Emma.